Hey guys, welcome to the We Need to Calm Down podcast. I'm Devon,
And I'm Joe.
and this is the show where we talk about all things Taylor Swift.
That's right. This is the show where two friends finally get to just keep talking about Evermore, just talk some more about Evermore, talk a little bit more about Evermore, and then probably like an interview or something.
We'll be discussing that, but normally we discuss song breakdowns, Taylor news, and our insane fan theories.
That's right. Actually, what's really funny is initially we had this episode slotted to be our Christmas episode. If you couldn't tell, if you're watching the video on YouTube, we have a bunch of Christmas themed stuff around us because Taylor does have a Christmas album. She has a Christmas song she released last year called Christmas Tree Farm. I don't know why I'm telling you that. Like, you probably don't already know that. If you're listening to this podcast, you definitely know that.
Yes.
And we planned on doing like a couple of more song breakdowns to have like most of Folklore done. Start talking about maybe some previous albums instead of Folklore. And, as the saying goes, if you want to make Taylor Swift laugh, tell her your plans, right? So today, with everything going on with Taylor, with Evermore, the Apple Songwriter of the Year interview, bonus tracks dropping, and after we've had a little bit more time to really sit with the album, we thought we'd just take today's episode to kind of chill and just discuss some like Taylor news and some Evermore stuff. Like nothing crazy, nothing like deep.
And I think that's what we all need. Deep. Well, yeah, we definitely will. But that's something we all need. We just need a little bit of time to just sit and simmer in this holiday season, Taylor Swift season, as always. So
I can't believe it's already Christmas. I can't. Like, every year. This is why I have no problem with starting Christmas music in October before Halloween, because like I'm never going to have the time to enjoy it because I blink and it's already here. Like, so start playing Taylor Swift's Last Christmas, the definitive best edition of that song, well before September, just so you can really enjoy the Christmas spirit by the time we get to it.
It's crazy because, I was sitting at work today and I'm thinking about the end of the year stuff that I have to do. And I'm like, didn't I just do this? Like, it's crazy to me that this year is already over, pretty much.
My manager like has this thing where he took off, and he like, I sent him an email knowing he was off. Just when he gets back, he'll respond to it. And his return email was, "I'm done working for the rest of the year. I'll be back in 2021." And I'm like, that's like a month from now. How are you? And it's like literally in 2 weeks. Like, it's insane to me. Not to mention, another thing I was going to mention, I completely just forgot about. So that's fun.
Okay. So let's dive into this episode. First things first, bonus tracks. So now that the physical albums are in stores, Joe and I were finally able to listen to these bonus tracks, read the lyrics, look at the booklet, and oh my.
Devon, what I don't think you can say word for word what I sent you after I listened to Right Where You Left Me, but what is the gist of the text message that I sent you about that song?
Oh gosh, what did you say? I mean, I know the general gist.
I believe it was expletive, 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 expletive.
It was... Oh yeah, it was holy curse, 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 curse. I'm losing it. Well, so
clearly I'm obsessed already. Within the first 5 seconds of listening to it, it just screamed "Speak Now" to me. And as a Taylor Swift,
Right Where You Left Me.
Right Where You Left Me is the first one. It's Time to Go is the official end of Evermore. Right Where You Left Me is basically picking up after Speak Now and just saying, hey, I'm going to keep doing this stuff again. It has the twang. It has the guitar. It has the flow, the content of the song. There's a banjo in this song again. Like, where did that come from? Taylor, like, dusting off the banjo from her closet, getting that in there. It literally is like a Fearless and Speak Now just like had a baby, and it was this song. which is insane. It just doesn't feel like it's on this album. It doesn't feel like it's on this album. It feels like a reject bonus track from those albums. It's insane.
Yeah, it really is insane because it really does sound like Speak Now, but like thematically, if you listen to the lyrics, yes, it fits Evermore and it fits the
Mm-hmm.
idea of these endings that we'll get into, but sonically, it just sounds so different.
100%. It.
Hmm.
I feel like, long story short, is like that. Like when I listened to it, and I mentioned it in our last episode, like how it reminded me of Speak Now, but like just like a little bit. But like I clung to that because I cling to anything that reminds me of Speak Now. And I was like, yeah, like it had quick lyrics and everything that I really like, and like it has like that those influence and everything. It definitely feels like a Speak Now. And then it was like Taylor was like, oh, you thought that was a Speak Now track? Just you wait, honey, I got you in store. And I had it on repeat all day. It's
Oh,
so
wow.
good. I'm obsessed with it. I'm excited to spend more time with it and really get to know it a little bit more. But it's really cool to hear her go back to that style, and that she still, I mean, not that it was ever in question, but she still has it.
Hmm.
Like she could still go back to that at any point.
Yeah. And
What
I
did you?
think,
Because I heard it before you and I freaked out.
yeah, so
Like,
I was
what
at
did
work
you? What were
dying.
your thoughts on
I wasn't able to fully enjoy. Joe was texting me all these things, and he's like, "I just listen to it. You have to listen." And I'm just like buried under work, like, oh no, I have to finish this before I have to clock
it?
out. But I listened on the way home, and I mean, they're good. Like, to be completely honest, like I only listened to them once, so I don't have a full, grasp on them. But they sound all right. I mean, like, it doesn't sound like a standout track to me, but again, it might be a
Interesting.
sleeper song. It might be something that comes up later and I'm like, oh my God, I love it. But just from thoroughly listening to these two songs, I kind of feel like they're like, okay, they're good. They're good songs, but I've gravitated towards other things more.
So before we talk about them as a whole, let's talk about "It's Time to Go," because this is the de facto end
Hmm.
track on this song. And I'll admit, for this one, definitely it doesn't stand out to me as much as I think the other one does. I still think it's a great track, but I think like that's one of the things that's interesting about this album. When we first heard it the first time, is nothing stood out about this
Hmm.
album. Like there was no body, no crime that stood out, but I don't know about you. It's that song, it's dropping for me just because it's so cookie cutter, and there's nothing like, get me wrong, it's a great return to form. I like the country songwriting, but it's dropping just because there are other songs that are just like elevated because of the songwriting, the
Hmm.
differences that she's doing, all this stuff. I feel like these songs are going to be more of those. Like I feel like they're going to be more, the more we listen to them, the more time we spend with them, they're going to just continue to rise and rise and rise, except for Right Where You Left Me, which is already close to the top for
Oh,
me.
wow.
We didn't like Speak Now.
I like,
Well, not that you didn't
listen,
like it.
listen,
I don't
listen.
want to put that out in the
Yeah,
world.
no.
You're
I,
not a Speak Now stan. You were a 1989 stan.
I guess, yeah. 1989's where I hit it off. Like I always kind of liked Taylor starting from the Fearless era. I didn't really get into self-titled, but Fearless, I was a fan. Speak Now, I was a fan. Like I had the songs. I lip synced a song for Christ's sake. Like I have Taylor Swift within me. But it was 1989. That was my first tour that I went to. So that's when I really, really, really got into Taylor.
Yeah. So It's Time to Go. It does feel more Evermore than
Hmm.
Right Where You Left Me. It's definitely more of an Evermore song, but we still get some pedal steel, which I'm hype about. I love pedal steel as an instrument. I think it's so cool and so interesting. It's awesome to see it in this song. It has like that country sound that we got out of like Cowboy Like Me, No Body, No Crime, that we were missing, and like that we're happy to see Taylor back in. So like the thing that I think is really interesting is like she was saying, as we were talking about an interview later, that she is re-recording what looks like Fearless right now while recording this album Evermore. And it's so funny because it feels like she's reintroducing that country from re-recording into this new song, which I'm here for. I'm so excited about it.
It's crazy because I didn't even think about that. Like, I didn't think about her doing this simultaneously. So she might be connecting with this music in a way that she hasn't for a long time and saying, you know what, I really did like that. And let me try to incorporate that into there. So I think that's great point to bring up. I didn't even think about the effect that that would have on her current songwriting.
Banjo.
Mm-hmm.
It has my name in it. Banjo. But don't ban Joe.
Ha ha ha.
That was a really God, I'm already a dad. It's so bad. All right, so as a whole, one thing for me with this album, before we like move into the next part of the show, we just wanted to do a quick blurb about these bonus tracks. We'll definitely talk about them more as we keep going through. But I personally, I'm just gonna let something off my list that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. So I think a huge part of this album is the lyrics. And I don't feel like I'm getting the full like weight of these songs because I haven't really spent any time individually with the songs or their lyrics, except for "'Tis the Damn Season," which has been on repeat for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't sit down with like Ivy or Champagne Problems or anything like that, and I'm seeing people post about them, posting about these stories and everything, and like you, even before we started recording this, you had to explain to me the story of Champagne Problems because I just never understood. Like everyone's like, this is so sad. I'm like, all right, well, it's about like celebrating and like a proposal or something, and it is that I'm very stupid. Like that is number one, but number two is that like I'm just like loving the sounds, I'm loving the music and everything, but I'm not putting anything under a microscope right now, mostly because I'm waiting for us to do our song breakdowns. I feel like when we do our song breakdowns, I'm going to lose my mind.
So it's
but like
my
it's your job. No, well, I do the lyrics. Come
yeah,
on.
we both do.
We both do the lyrics.
We both sing.
We've been singing all day. Uh, I feel like I love every single song on this album. We have said it a couple of times when we were trying to rank them. It's near impossible. Even our favorite songs ended up at the bottom, which is like heartbreaking for us.
The amount of
like,
DMs I've gotten, I'm like, stop. I know.
I've had so many people that are like, how could you put this song at the bottom? It's beautiful. Like, it's so good. I'm like, it is. Like,
I know it is.
The problem is
so
something
good.
has to be at the bottom. They're all so good. Like, I like this song way more than Folklore. This album way more than Folklore. I'm so obsessed with this album. Unlike anything I've ever been. Like, I was not this obsessive about Lover. I was not this obsessive about Reputation, definitely. 1989, no. The last time I felt this obsessed about an album was Red. And to be completely honest, I don't think I was this obsessed about Red. I was this obsessed about like the first 7 songs of Red. This one, I'm obsessed with every single song. Like I said in our last episode, even Marjorie, which is a song that like is put in that slot of like Soon You'll Get Better that I never listened to. To be fair, it's still in that slot for me because it's so far low because it's like that. But like it's the best one of those songs she's ever put out, and I still love it. I just don't like crying all the time. But I'm excited to do these song breakdowns more than anything because I think like when we did the song breakdowns for like especially like, Exile stands out to me because Exile, I always thought it was a great song, but when you pointed out the things that you noticed in the song, when I pointed out some things that I noticed after reading through the lyrics, that song became this amazing piece of work that I never realized just listening to it. So I'm afraid that when we delve deeper into these songs, I'm going to become so obsessive over them. I'm going to lose my mind. Especially how reminiscent of older these songs are with the Long Story Short, 2 bonus tracks, Cowboy Like Me, like all of these songs that Taylor wrote and took inspiration from her younger self. Like it's insane. And especially with these bonus tracks, like we said, inspired by her younger self, like it feels like they're teasers into her re-record process. Like she's like sitting here like, hey, remember when I used to sound like this on this, like I'm giving you songs that you of how I used to sound. Well, here's new me sounding exactly like I did before. It's still pretty good, right? Yes, Taylor, it's very good. And it's like it's almost like marketing. It's like she's also marketing her re-records with her new music, because she's like, if you were afraid that you would hear Love Story and it wouldn't sound quite like old Taylor, just so you know, you don't have to worry about that. I still have it. I'm still gonna put it out. You're still gonna love it. And I just talked for a while. You go off a little bit about Evermore.
Like maybe the old Taylor isn't actually dead, as she claims in Reputation. Your Christmas hat just fell off.
She's coming back. Listen,
you haven't met the new me yet.
No, don't even get me started on that, because I almost cried today from just that. But actually, if you want, we can transition that. So one thing that we kept hearing as well is, well, for number one, Taylor won Apple Songwriter of the Year. Obviously. Mm-hmm. If she didn't win it for Folklore, my God, she won it for Evermore. So there was a big interview she did, and that was the second half of this episode. We wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about that. So, like we said, Taylor won Apple Songwriter of the Year. Big shock. And I think it's really funny. I did like a quick cursory glance through all of the albums that were released this year, because it just feels like 2020 was the year of Taylor Swift. And even if she hadn't dropped Evermore, it still feels like Folklore itself just like drowned out every other release this year. So a couple of like other pop idols that released albums this year that you might have forgot, or like me, heard of. Halsey's Manic, I definitely heard of. I listened to that album into the dirt. Dua Lipa's Future Nostalgia, Grammy nominated. I had a lot of people telling me that I should listen to, that it was phenomenal, and it was a great album. Lady Gaga came out with Chromatica. Lady Gaga, arguably one of the biggest pop stars in the world. Ariana Grande came out with Positions in October. I listened to it once, and then I went back to Folklore. Selena Gomez had Rare. Am I the only one that had no idea Selena dropped an album this year?
I knew that she had released the single Rare, but I didn't know it was a whole album. But it makes sense because I've heard multiple songs from the album. I just didn't piece together.
I know Lose You to Love Me, but I thought that was last year.
No, that was last year.
Okay. Yeah. I don't
like Look at Her Now, I think was on there.
Okay. I think I know that one. I remember that was the one that was the biggest shocker, but I was like, I can't believe Selena Gomez put an album and I barely heard about it. Charlie XCX, How I'm Feeling Now. Harry Styles, Fine Line. Not a female pop idol, but it's Grammy nominated. Katy Perry put out an album. Didn't know about that either. And then Shawn Mendes, which we are officially off him. I know. I read like an article from last year about John Mayer talking with him and like all the stuff that he said, and
I told you this.
I know, and I didn't listen, and I wanted to be fine with it, but I'm not. Now I'm officially done. Shawn Mendes, I'm sorry, you're dead to me. But like he came out with an album like last week, and Taylor amazingly just dropped the second album and said, oh, you don't get anything. I remember seeing a banner ad for it on Spotify, and that's it. I thought Camilla promoting it a little bit, but that's it. Like, but if you think about like all of these albums, especially the ones that came out between August and now, like Harry Styles, Katy Perry, Shawn Mendes, Ariana, like all of those albums that like came out in the wake of Folklore. What, you giving me a look?
No, Fine Line did not come after.
I have no idea when Fine Line came out. When did that come
before that.
Okay,
like
so then
the year, I think.
So Ariana, Katy Perry, Shawn Mendes, all of those that came out post Folklore, pre Evermore, I feel like they got swept under the rug because everyone's talking about Taylor, and she made 2020's news cycle her thing to keep it PG.
She let people have the beginning of the year, and that's when we had everyone obsessing over Fine Line and people obsessing about Future Nostalgia, me being one of them.
And Manic.
I wasn't one of them.
I know.
And Charlie XCX, How I'm Feeling Now. I had that album cycling. Just that was the only thing. And then as soon as Taylor put out Folklore, that was it. I listened to Positions a couple times. I really liked it, but then Evermore came out and swept up again.
It's just gone. Well, the other thing that's also crazy is you don't even realize Taylor Swift came out with an album in May too. She came out with a live album. I don't know if it was her or Big Machine, but she came out with the live rendition of her show, which is our first episode. So like she was in the news from May, and then that carried to like she is a master at the news cycle and keeping herself relevant, because then we get to September/October when she should have been out and Long Pond Studio Sessions drops. Like she the Rolling Stones stuff has come out and she's been on top of that. Like it feels like every month we've had to push an episode for some kind of news that she's doing, which is awesome. And it's really, in a way, screwed over everyone that isn't Paul McCartney.
Yeah. Very kind towards him.
But like I said, I feel like I'm a very Taylor-centric musical person. I listen to Halsey, Taylor Swift, occasionally Ariana Grande, now Charlie XCX, thanks to Devon. But like it's still, those are all such huge releases. It's nuts to me that like Taylor Swift has just swept them all. And there was a poll not too long ago from Spotify that like she has the top 10 songs by female artists that were released this year, top streaming, are all her.
That's
They're
insane.
all folklore/evermore. Like not even like Ariana Grande I think is her biggest quote unquote competition, and like nothing by her. It's insane. Anyway, Taylor Swift did a 1-hour interview about folklore and evermore with Zane Lowe.
You know, just,
and that's what we're going to talk about.
You were shocked that it was an hour, because I remember I told you about it and I said we should do an episode on it, or we're getting comments about it, and you looked it up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's an hour. Like it's so much.
Well, initially I heard that he had done interviews with her before. Like they have a good rapport and she loves him. Taylor said that she thinks he knows her and her music better than she does, which is high praise. And he is an esteemed radio host and personality. And I was like, why do I know this voice? Why do I know this guy? And they actually did an interview last year around October about Reputation Lover and the Me Too movement. It was like a 14-minute interview on Apple. And I know this because it was on Apple Music, and I never listen. I have Spotify, as we mentioned. I never listen to Apple Music. So I listened to it that whole interview on Apple Music, and then every time I got in my car, when the Bluetooth connected, it would always just play the beginning of that interview. So I heard the beginning of that interview at least 30 times getting into my car. But I have talked about you on this podcast a lot because in the beginning she starts right off talking about Brendan Urie and Pete Wentz, and how much she loves and respects Pete Wentz as a songwriter and a lyricist and like all this stuff. And I'm like, I geeked out on it. That's too many of my favorite artists on one. Like that's everything I love. Fall Out Boy, Taylor Swift, and Halsey. Those are the holy trinity of Joey's favorite music. But let's get into this interview because it, like we said, was an hour long. There was so much discussed. The dude is an amazing, he's a really good interviewer, and he really pulled a lot of stuff out of her that was really fun. And she is just, it's so nice to see her talking again in the limelight, like hearing her voice and hearing her talk about the craft. Like, I feel like it's something we were a little starved of over the last 3-ish years. We haven't really heard much from her. So it's always nice to just like get that from her. And it's I feel like it's the most genuine she's been in probably forever, because she's just finally dropped everything and she's just Taylor now. She's not like the different guises she put on for each era, which she's mentioned before. So, Devon, tell me about you.
So right off the bat, we both pointed out that she basically more or less denounces the idea of a trilogy. She shuts it down. She says, yeah, I had this feeling of a quiet conclusion and this weird serenity, like we did what we set out to do. And it just feels like she's shutting the book on the folklore era. And she says, what did she say about it? She said something like, folklore seemed like an ending, but then she just wanted to keep going. And she's like, I don't want to leave the forest yet. And then while Jack and Aaron might not have thought that they were going to do another album, this was the first time she adorned the same kind of era for 2 albums. She's never done that before. So she, you know, she had this anxiety of like, you have to leave, you have to change your identity. And she was like, no, I want to stay. So she put out Evermore, and then she felt like that was the serenity that she needed to say like, this is done now. Which thank God.
I mean, I don't even want to say thank God, like, because there's 2 sides to this coin. Number one, we would have to do 1,000 more episodes, and while I the thing is while I'm afraid of doing all of that extra work additionally, while we already have this much work and we still haven't finished Folklore, the other thing is like, honestly, this album, when we first heard about it, we did not expect to love it as much as Folklore. I don't think, like, I still can't believe that I like it as much as I do comparatively to Folklore. But I don't feel like there needs to be any more. I'm afraid, like, me thinks, well, if this is as good, if she keeps going, could it be even better? And it's Taylor, probably. But I'm also afraid that, like, we're gonna peak, or the shoe's gonna drop, or we're gonna get the next one and we're gonna be like, okay, well, I wish she stopped at this one, which I don't think is necessarily a thing that would happen, but like, I think I'm satisfied with this. I don't think I need any more. I feel like Folklore was like a sentence, like it was like the Folklore era is like this long sentence by Folklore, and then Evermore was just this exclamation point at the end of that sentence going, by the way, here's everything you needed in addition to what you got, and you don't need anymore.
It definitely was. It was a punctuation mark, whether it be an exclamation mark or a period or something else. Like it ended it, which she talks about. Like that was, it gives that completion to it.
And I don't even know where I'd want her to go from this. But the other thing is that's cool is she also goes in to mention that, like, the way that she wrote songs before was, and I hate this word, is diaristic, which sounds awful. But she said it was not sustainable what she was doing. And I love that she expresses that, and like how she mentions that now that she knows with Folklore and now with Evermore that she's no longer tied to having to write about her own experiences. She's freed from like articles that, like, or from writing stories that are, or songs that are journals or magazines write about. Like, she can write about literally anything, and it makes me excited about the next project that isn't in the Folklore era, because it means we're going to get more of this Folklore style storytelling, but like the paint job might be different, the production's going to be different. What is she going to do with Max Martin when she's doing stuff like this, if she goes back to him? Like, it just opens up so much in all of these other things she can do, but now we don't even have to worry about, well, she's happily in a relationship with Joe. What are we going to get? Just like happy in a relationship songs, which obviously clearly not.
No, but she's not going to run out of material. And I love that she talks about her mental health and how it's not sustainable for that. And I'm just honestly so happy for her, because she's just provided so much to this community and to her fans. And she deserves to take a break. She deserves to revel in what she created with this Folklore and Evermore era and just kind of sit back. And she talks at the end of the interview about wanting to, you know, the next things in her life, not really planning out projects, but planning out places she wants to go and things she wants to do. And I think this period of her should really be just reflection and enjoying her 30s. I mean, she's still young, like, and she's in love. She's with this man that she loves. I think that they should, you know, go to the lakes, recluse, and just have their life there for a little bit. You know, obviously re-record her music, give it to us. That'll sustain us for a little bit, and then do your own thing for a bit. But I love the point that you bring up.
That's the thing too. Go ahead.
I love the point that you bring up about the media basically just spinning all these stories about her, because she had this great quote that she felt like she was loading a cannon of clickbait with every song that she released. And that's just such a great metaphor. And it's so true, because you know how many news outlets and BuzzFeed type journalistic things that just come out that overanalyze everything. And obviously Swifties are big conspiracy theories, so it's everything has a message, and oh, but what if this, what if that, and it's just at the end of the day, it just hurts her mental, stability. It's like, it's debilitating at times.
Well, that's the thing with Lover, like it came out, and with Red, and with all of these albums, is like the first thing when it comes out is BuzzFeed will put up an article. All right, what is which ex-boyfriend is each song on this album about? Like the number of articles that are up that is insane. Yeah. And I think she really busted a hole in it with Death by a Thousand Cuts, because she wrote a breakup song that was nothing to do with her, that like was not with her relationship. It was about a movie and a book she had read, like, which I think is awesome. And I think that like someone made the theory, I have credit for this, but someone mentioned like, yeah, I think that's how we got into folklore. Like Death by a Thousand Cuts is the catalyst that gave us folklore. And I love that. Like that sounds so accurate. Like she wrote this song that wasn't about herself and was like, okay, I might be able to do this on a grander scale. And I think you're right, like 100%. I think it's time to go. She should take some time, because the thing is too, she has what, 5 albums, four albums, 5 albums, that she can re-record. 5 albums she can re-record right now. If she puts one of those out every 6 months, that's 2.5 years that she can just not do anything, not worry about anything. I don't like, we'll talk later. She talks about like touring with these records, but I mean we talked about this a little bit. We're fine with just, if we're getting a new re-record every 6 months, I think that'll sustain me for a while until she decides, all right, I'm gonna write something new, and then put something new out.
Well, we can go into that, because I think that's the perfect time. She talks about having this like brain space, and that the creative process is so much more than just, creating the album and then going to tour it, like touring it. And I love this because, this is my industry. She talks about touring and, okay, well, now we have to choreograph the song. And then, how are we going to transition, and how are we going to distract them, and these set changes, and what image do I have to put on, and what special guests are we going to bring in? And like just creating this experience that is such a creative and imaginative process that you don't even think of it when you're just a consumer of it. So when all of that is stripped away, when my industry is bleeding dry and there's nothing to do, just how much brain space do you have left? And the answer is she can make 2 albums out of it in less than 4 months, 6 months, something like that. So I asked Joe this question.
It was 5 months.
Yeah. 5 months. I asked Joe this question. I said, do we just ask her to stop touring if we want more music, or do we just kind of suck it up and go, you know what, like put out 1 tour and then take a couple of years off, come back to us in a bit, like you're fine?
I think that's an interesting question to pose. Like, if, granted, I don't think that it's literally one or the other, but if we wanted to boil it down and say, hey, if you went up to someone, you gave them 2 buttons, you gave them Taylor Swift tours and puts out albums like she normally does every 2 or 3 years, or you push button B and Taylor Swift doesn't tour and she puts out an album every either 6 months to a year, I think I'm pushing that second button. Like, because like she said, she's not running out of creative juice anytime soon. She could definitely sustain, I imagine, especially if she knows that's all she's doing. But
I have a point to bring
for
up.
me, what's that?
Well, you finish your point first, but I'm going to come back to this.
Now, I was just going to say, like, for me, like, don't get me wrong, Taylor puts on an amazing show. I've seen her Reputation, and I've seen her 1989, and I've watched the Speak Now World Tour DVD a lot. She puts on an amazing show. She knows what she's doing. She's an amazing stage presence, and she knows how to not only be on that stage presence, but like she said, pick where everyone's going to go and the story she's telling on stage too, because she is. Speak Now, she has an entire story line that she's going through. Same with 1989 and Reputation. But at the same time, for me, even though I have a good job, I have time off that I can take if she were to go. Like, yeah, I could spend $400-$300 on a nice ticket to this album or to this tour and see her every 2 or 3 years. Or I could just spend that much money on her merch like I'm doing right now.
Yeah, you are.
And get new music and be excited about new music. Like, I don't know. I'd rather listen to her. Like, I'd rather go to like a Taylor Swift club night and just have them play nothing but Taylor Swift songs.
Taylor Swift re-record.
Like, I've done that with like.
So she gets all the money.
Okay, I'm just saying when this stuff all goes away, when everyone's vaccinated, Corona's like a dream in the past, which I don't think that's ever going to be the case, but whatever. I know that Philly has Drake night. I know that I've been to a Mr. Brightside night where they play all mid-2000s rock.
Kung Fu Necktie has a Taylor Swift night.
I didn't know that.
Well, hopefully Kung Fu Necktie is still open.
That's a good point. Either way, I think I could get that concert feeling of just dancing around with other people who are into Taylor Swift as much as I am at a club for much reasonably priced drinks, and just buy a t-shirt online for probably less somehow.
The other thing though is
what's your point?
Okay, well, before I get into that point, you brought up another point again, because my industry, touring, you need touring. Like, you need touring to make some kind of money. However, I mean, when you think about it, the reason why ticket prices are so expensive, especially for Taylor and other large artists who tour stadiums, is because when you get to a certain level of fame, I watched a great interview with Billie Eilish where she talks about it, or maybe it was actually her brother Phineas. My friend actually interviewed him. It was pretty cool. But so basically he goes on to say, like, you can't, like, when you get to a certain level, you can't put on just like an acoustic, entire tour. Like, you can do pop-up shows and stuff, but if you want to make money and draw out those thousands and thousands and thousands of people, the production value needs to be insane. You need those pyrotechnics. You need these giant LED screens and video screens and all that stuff. And that's why, like, that was happening. Loverfest, she said, I don't think I could do that with this, so I'm gonna push it to 2 separate dates. We'll never know what that's like. I don't know if we will, but that's why you kind of need to tour, because you need to make that revenue. However, that money is also being paid for all of those expenses for, whatever your deal point is with these tours. But my other point I'm going to say, backtracking, is, a great comparison. I know you don't like her, but Ariana, she put out, what was it, 2 or 3 albums, like, so close to each other? I know it was, she put out Sweetener, and then
Thank You Next, Sweetener, and now Positions.
Because it was Sweetener, then Thank You Next, then Positions. And I don't know the timeline between Thank You Next and Positions, but Sweetener and Thank You Next were so close. And as an Ariana Grande fan, I loved the first one, loved the second, and then I was burnt out from her, and I just did not want to hear more. So I don't know if I want to hear all these Taylor Swift albums going back to back to back, because I feel like that also kind of takes away the novelty of a new album.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Because you think about Lorde, and we still haven't gotten an album after Melodrama, but I still continuously go back to Melodrama and to, oh my gosh, the first one, blanking.
Pure Heroine.
Pure Heroine. I continuously go back to them because I know they're masterpieces in their own right. But Taylor just has too many masterpieces. And it's
quick update on the Lorde front. She has the name for the album. Didn't tell us yet, but she has the name for the album, whatever that means. She recorded or wrote any songs for it yet, but in her head knows what the name of the album is, which is more news than we've had on the new Lorde album in 3 freaking years. But
all right,
that was your Lorde update.
Yes, we are a Taylor Swift podcast. We are already very far into this episode.
Yeah. So let's keep going.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Quick little point. Love that she talks about how she walks into the Long Pond Studios for the first time, and Jack and Aaron are already there rehearsing. And what song are they rehearsing? Obviously August, because everyone loves that song. Of course they were.
Jack is obsessed with that song.
They all are. They have so much fun. We also learn that Folklore and Evermore covered the span of all 4 seasons, basically covers a year. So she talks about how she knew that Folklore is the spring and the summer, and Evermore would be the fall and the spring. And obviously, you know, we have August and then 'Tis the Damn Season. Like, those 2 songs alone kind of set the scene of like 2 opposite spectrums. But I just love it because it also just takes you through this year, like through the pandemic. And she, you know, talks about just like being in November, like from March to November, or July to November, something like that, in I think Evermore. And it's just crazy because I think it perfectly captures the duality of that, and also goes from a more lighthearted childlike theme in the summer, like you're just kind of having fun, into these serious things like the darkness of the winter seasons.
Seasonal affectionate disorder.
Sad.
Which I think is the best acronym in the world. Yeah, no, it's nuts. And like, you think it's cool to hear that, because now I'm thinking back to Folklore, which is very rare for me at this point, because all I'm doing is Evermore all day every day. But like 7, Sweet Tea in the Summer, like they're just it's stuff that I never thought about, but there are so many references to summer, to spring, to like beautiful weather, nice weather, and then you get to Evermore and you're like, oh, sad. Like, dark,
Yeah,
depressing, dreary, like
it's 4 p.m. and
November,
it's dark.
December. Oh, don't even get me started.
Get
me started. All right.
Yeah, then the next point, I love that she mentions that she's talking about, or Zane mentions how, you know, how do you keep up with everyone's expectations of you? And she says, you know, I feel like every year it's, you know, you have to hit the same exact point that you hit last year plus more. So there's always this, like, she said she feels like she's on an obstacle course trying to keep up with everyone's expectations of her. And I just immediately thought of Mirrorball, where she, you know, I'm still on that tightrope. You know, she's still trying so carefully to navigate this success. And I just love that she just kind of goes, you know what? Screw the checklist, screw all the plans. I'm not going to make a cookie cutter checklist for this album. I'm just going to create art. And I love that so much.
That was an interesting thing that she mentioned, the checklist. The fact that when she's going through an album, she said she was talking to Ed Sheeran about this. That like they have to have, all right, what's the radio hit? What's the performance hit that we could, that is the big number that we do when we're at the live show? What's this? Like, and just going through and picking a checklist, and that she just threw all of that out for these albums. Like, it makes me wonder, because she also later in the interview mentioned that, like, yeah, I'm gonna throw away my lists. She's like, I'm still gonna be a list person because I'm still who I am. I can't change who I am. But like, she mentioned, like, I'm gonna give up on lists for a little bit, or like change my thought of that. And it makes me honestly really hope that her next studio album, that is a Lover era, she still has thrown away that checklist. Because as much as like I like everything she does, like, it definitely, like, you can kind of pick out those songs from her checklist when you know that she has it. Like, you can pick out the me's, the Look What You Made Me Do's, like all of those songs that, like, don't get me wrong, they're amazing because she's amazing. But like, what if she didn't feel constrained to have to do them? You get Folklore and you get Evermore. And like, I would take a million more Folklores and Evermores than I would, no offense, Reputations or Shake It Offs or Me's. Like,
it's crazy to me too, because like, part of me is happy, part of me is sad, but in a way, like, I mean, this is a new decade for her. She's in her 30s now. Like, she is not the same girl she was years ago.
She's a new decade for literally everyone,
well,
Devon.
All right. Well, I mean, whatever. You know what I mean. But so she's in this new chapter of her life. She's in her 30s now. And, she's not that same little girl. And she still has elements of her here and there. We talked about it. She still has the country inside of her. She still has all these little things. But I think that she's really using these two albums. And I think we're going to see a big pivot for her. I mean, do you think she's still going to be doing these giant stadium tours and these like fantastic pop performances? Maybe. She definitely could. But do you think that's something she'd want to do?
I think I can easily see her moving into like a festival style, like Lover style. I think that was her intro into it. And her, can I do this? Will people pay for this? And obviously people will pay for anything Taylor Swift does.
I think that
But I'm interested to see how that evolves knowing what she's doing now.
I think she's moving into a larger creative period of her life. I think she's lived by the cookie cutter standard for so long, even if it hasn't been exactly cookie cutter. I think that that's what she's seen. She's always abided by a list. She's very organized, very strategic. I think now we're going to see her go into this era of, what, I can just do things to do things. Like I can put out these albums. I can make themed things. I can do whatever I want. And I think that we're going to see her become a lot more experimental. And I think we're going to see her just try this entirely new side of her.
That's the thing I'm most excited about, because I feel like every time she does something experimental, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, and I mentioned this on our last episode, but how like when she did dubstep and I Knew You Were Trouble, and I Knew You Were Trouble was such a standout track for me. From that album. And now for me, Closure on this album, where she puts glitch pop and like this weird 5/4 timing and everything in it, like just doing things just to be like, can I do them and can I make them work? And like Closure is sneakily again becoming one of my favorite songs this album. All of them sneakily are becoming a favorite song on the album, but like I guess I'll say Closure is the one that like I find myself singing randomly, which I can't say about every song on this album. But I hold that in high esteem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, and like just hearing like, okay, I didn't know that I wanted glitch pop in a Taylor Swift song. I don't even know that I did want to, or that I do right now want it, but I'm happy that I have it. I'm happy that it still sounds amazing because it's Taylor and she can make it sound great. What else can she do that we've never heard before? Like there are so many things, so many collaborations, and now she's at this point in her career where she can, like you said, do literally anything. And I'm hyped to see who she reaches out to next, or even if she just keeps this quote unquote band together that she mentioned, like how she loves working with these people, Aaron Dessner, Justin Vernon, and Jack Antonoff,
Haim
like,
sisters, Marcus Mumford, they all just want to start a band.
And that's the thing, is like, you go like, with Taylor, and she can go to anyone, and it's so cute to me how she was like, I was so nervous to go to Justin Vernon and like ask him if he wants to be on a song. Like literally, I can't think of one single artist that isn't like a death metal artist or something like completely out of nowhere, but that would like say, no, I don't want to do a song with Taylor Swift. Like even Kesha did a song with the Steel Panthers, I think is what they're called, is that band or whatever. Like like Taylor can do. She just has this clout, and like if you're an artist, no matter where you are an artist, if Taylor Swift comes to you and says, do you want to do a song together, if you're smart, you're gonna be like, yeah, the biggest artist in the world wants to do a song with me, this is gonna be the best thing to get people to come and listen to me. I almost want to listen to The National now, because almost because like if it sounds anything like Folklore and Evermore, like, okay, I'm into that right now. That's the mood I'm into. And like, that's amazing marketing. So like, I think she can literally ask anyone to do anything right now, and they'd be like, yeah, sure. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
So the other thing she said that she recorded You Belong With Me and Happiness in the same time span, which, like, what?
That's insane to me. Like,
what? Could you imagine?
What time frame does that exist?
Like in the same week, you just go, you belong with me, and there was happiness because of me.
It's just polar opposites. You have like such a bop of a song, and then I'm crying in a fetal position in the shower. Like, there's what's the in between? Taylor's over here just like, haha, you belong with me. All right. There was happiness because yeah.
Does like that, does the thing in the theater where like the mask goes over and she just turns into sad. But I will think one thing that's interesting about her mentioning that is, so we know that she recorded Love Story, we know that she's recorded You Belong With Me. Does that mean that we're getting Fearless already? Or does that mean that she started with Fearless? Those are two Fearless tracks. It's leaning that way, but it also feels weird to re-record Fearless and not before, like, to pick that album out of all of your albums to start with. Granted, I think it was her.
Another point I want to mention is that she had mentioned she was re-recording Love Story, and then who'd have guessed it, there was a snippet of Love Story out. What if she's doing the same thing with You Belong With Me, where she just so casually drops it out there, and then all of a sudden, oh look, we have a snippet of You Belong With Me somewhere.
I can see that. I 100% can see that.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds, you gotta ask her for another song. You gotta do another commercial.
It's part 2.
Also, something really cool to stay on this for just a second longer. She mentioned that she is keeping some surprises for the fans in her re-records, and that she's really excited about that, which makes me really excited about, okay, we're getting carbon copies of the same songs that we love so we can support our favorite artists, but we're also getting additional stuff as well, which is, especially if we know she's going on this long break, exciting to hear again.
But we're also getting the 10-minute version of All Too Well.
We're also getting we're going to speak this into existence.
Manifest
Taylor, we are getting the 10-minute version of All Too Well that is happening.
Yes. Confirmed.
So anyway,
yeah. So
all right, so what was the next thing she mentioned?
So something that I just love over the years, here we go again. Taylor Swift keeps advocating for artists' rights, and I just love that. She is just so vocal and open about, artists' rights and just what they deserve. And, for an artist of her stature, like, it really helps to bring those people who are just not at your level. And a lot of people say, well, it's only because she's like so influential, like that deal would only work for Taylor Swift, like it wouldn't work for anyone else. And she directly challenges it by saying, like, no one should go through this. Like it shouldn't take me at my status to have to still fight this fight. And she brings up this great like idea for new artists, like she's directly talking to record labels, and she thinks it should start with the deal where you begin by only licensing the music to labels, so you still retain ownership, but record labels are still making their money from that licensing, but then after a certain point they do retain their ownership, so they can gift it to their children and that be their legacy, instead of like having to do what she's doing right now. And the thing that would be debated is just that time frame. Like that's the deal, that's the negotiation. So she's a businesswoman, like she knows what she's talking about, and it seems like she's thought about this for a while. And to have her her level of artistry talking to these record labels, I think is a really good thing to be doing for her.
I agree. No, it's cool to see her like constantly talking about it, because you see people like trash her, like saying like, oh, she's just doing it for the publicity, or she's just writing this letter to Apple for XYZ. Like the fact that she is continually saying the same thing over and over and over again just really paints her in a great light, and it shows that she really cares. This is something she really cares about, feels strongly about. All right, so then she starts talking about the album Evermore and goes track by track, talking a little bit more about stuff like them. So for Willow, I love that she mentions like how witchy it is. Like that's such a theme that she's really harped on for this album.
Those remixes.
Oh my gosh, so many remixes. One for each of the witches from Hamlet. It's Hamlet, right? I think it's Hamlet. I hope it's Hamlet.
Are there witches in Hamlet?
Yeah, double toilet trouble.
I have two brain cells. I was just talking to someone today about how everything in school just hopped out.
Well, that's why I have the English stuff. That's all I know. It might be it's not. I'm trying to think of what it was. It's either Hamlet or the other one, and I don't remember.
A
Either way,
Midsummer's Night's Dream? A Midsummer Night's Dream?
that is
Midsummer?
definitely not it.
No?
No, that is definitely not
All
it.
right, whatever. Anyways.
Either way. It's the one thing that I think the thing I really want to harp on there. We're running really long, so I think we're just going to truncate a little bit. We're going to dive into these a little bit more in our song breakdowns. So I don't think we should just talk about everything she says about every song on here. But I think one of the most interesting things that we really delved into was you mentioned, or she mentioned, and you mentioned the theme of folklore being conflict resolution, which I think is also really interesting because she has given us 3 chapters of folklore, none of which were entitled conflict resolution.
Well, because that's the whole album.
It's true. That's a good point. But you think about it, you put that conflict resolution right on it, and it fits in like a puzzle piece. It makes complete sense. And then she goes on to the theme of evermore being endings, which like it's one of those, like for me, I never really thought about it, but then you go, oh yeah, I guess that song's about an ending, and that one. And that one.
And the
song
so we
actually
went
Closure. Through and the song called Closure. So Willow we thought was like one of the only songs that wasn't really about an ending, but that's interesting. Fine. It's the opener. Doesn't need to be about an ending. Then we go into 2, which is Champagne Problems, which is about a rejected proposal, which Devon did a very nice mini song breakdown for me, so I understood what the song was about. Then we go to Gold Rush, where like it feels like you lose a relationship because the person is no longer interested in someone who's famous. Tis the Damn Season kind of feels like one last fling with someone who you're never going to see again, or at that point you don't want to see again. We get Tolerate It at the end of the marriage where the love has just gone. Body, no crime. Death is a pretty good ending. We get Happiness, moving on from a positive relationship. What's Letting Go of a Friend?
Dorothea,
that's right. Yeah. A friend that's moved on and just thinking like, oh, well, hope you're still thinking about me, and like knowing that friendship is probably end.
And Coney Island.
Oh my god, yeah. Like it's I'm trying to remember them in order. Coney Island, contemplating what happened after a relationship's over and ended. You get Ivy, which is about infidelity. Cowboy Like Me, this one's a really interesting one that you pointed out, is ending your player-esque ways or your womanizing-esque kind of mantra and finding someone who is a perfect fit for you. And like it's so interesting because it's finding end in a new beginning, but it's still an ending in a way.
Forever is the sweetest calm.
Oh god, this album's so good, guys.
Yeah.
It's so good. What take me home.
Long story short, about finding the right guy after going through the wrong ones. Marjorie, the finality of life of a loved one. Closure, the finality of actually getting over somebody and not needing their closure anymore, and then evermore, this pain won't be forever,
which is a huge one. I think it's like I never looked at them all through that lens, and I'm definitely going to hear them in a little bit differently now. So she, like we said, she goes over a bunch of the way that she wrote some songs. Devon, do you want to hit the highlights?
Yeah, let's just go through these pretty quick because we're running pretty long. So her and Joe just really love sad songs, huh? So, it's just, they're just so funny. It's like, Zane points out, like, you guys are so happy. Why are you creating some of the saddest songs I've ever listened to? And they're just like, yeah, we just love sad songs.
I mean, to be fair, I feel that. Like...
Yeah, but it's just like, hey babe, what do you want to do tonight? Cry? Cool.
I don't know. What if we like broke up? Like, and just like wrote a bunch of songs about it. Like, we're not actually gonna break up, but like, what if we like broke up?
That's their role play.
It's so funny. It'd be so funny, right? Oh my god.
Moving on, Champagne Problems, she mentioned was her favorite bridge to write, and I called that. I said that's my favorite bridge in the album. Boom, I'm right. I also love that she points out she wants to hear a crowd sing back to her, "What a shame she's effed in the head." Like, that's just the
I love
evolution of
that.
Taylor. She just wants to hear them scream that word out. And she compares it to All Too Well, where it's this like collective community, just emotional healing, which I just love about that. I did not realize Justin Vernon popped off as much as he did on the album. Like, obviously, you have Evermore, but he does drums and guitar on Cowboy Like Me, background vocals for Ivy and Marjorie. He really just dove in, which she is such a big fan of, and she just didn't realize he was going to continue to do. She explains Coney Island is a place where thrills were once sought. I mean, I've been to Coney Island a couple times in my life, and I just love that comparison of looking at a desolate Coney Island where, there used to be thrill here, and comparing that to a relationship. And the fact that she wrote the lyric that you hate, "Happy Birthday," specifically to hear Matt sing it for her because she knew it was going to come out before her birthday.
Such a bad lyric. I hate it so
I
much.
know. Two songs that this interview just kind of skyrocketed for us are Happiness and Marjorie. I'm broken at both of them. I think a quick thing about Happiness, her explanation of just I haven't met the new me yet, which we all kind of understood. And then the second verse, "You haven't met the new me yet," which we all thought was, okay, well, you just haven't met who I've become. But she
Yeah.
explains the double meaning of you haven't met the new me yet, or like you haven't met who's going to replace me, which blew our
That
minds.
blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like it I wasn't ready for that, and like Happiness is one of those songs I really do enjoy, but like it's never been in the upper echelon.
Oh,
Like
so
I don't
good.
find myself singing it very often. I know you do,
Mm-hmm.
but like it's up there now.
Mm-hmm.
Now that
Yeah.
and like her saying like, yeah, like you haven't met the new me yet, and I think she'll give you that. Like that line always confused me because I was like, what do you mean? So you think the new me is going to give you forgiveness and like all of this stuff that I never gave you? Like I'm going to change to be the person that does that. And the fact that she's talking about it's like champagne problems in a little bit in the end, where she's saying, no, everything that I couldn't give you, the new me that you find able to give you that.
Oh no, she is talking
It's
about herself in the last one. You haven't met the new me yet, and I think she'll give you that, in the sense of, Taylor still doesn't know who she is, but she can anticipate her becoming someone who forgives him.
That's not what I thought she said in the interview. In the interview, she said, "You haven't met the new me yet," which is the new girl, and she thinks the new girl will give her all of that stuff that it.
Mm,
Either way, it's a
meetings,
double
yeah,
meaning, and
exactly.
it's insane. It's so good. It's so good. I can't wait to dive into these songs. All right, so Marjorie,
Marjorie has been a
ow,
favorite of, yeah, you've liked that song a lot. I liked it, not as much as the other ones, but there's also the fact that I was like never super close with my grandparents because I was just too young, and like a lot of my grandparents died when I was younger. And I mean, Taylor being in, her 30s now, she's starting to reflect back on these memories. And, you know, in her age, she's like, well, how was she when she was my age? And I feel like I just don't want to think about this song too much because I think it'll hurt too much. But it's just such a great message. And, all these news outlets are saying how beautiful it is and how this is like one of her best songs that encapsulates the entire album.
it's funny as you mention that because I felt that way about Soon You'll Get Better. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had no form of reference to relate to that song in any way, so I never cried to it. I never really gave it a second glance. I honestly could count how many times I've listened to it on both hands.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very odd for a Taylor Swift song. This song I can probably do the same because I don't like crying all the time. Like I grew up with my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I say I grew up with my grandmother, she was in the same house as me. Like I had lived with my grandmother until I was 23, and then I moved out for a year, moved back in with my grandmother, and I had only ever not lived with my grandmother for about 3 years of my life. And I'm going on the third right now because happy 1 year anyway.
Yeah.
Um it's so it's hard to listen to.
Mhm.
It is one of the most beautiful songs. When you hear that they sampled her grandmother in the song,
That's insane.
I don't even know. I don't even know how she mentioned how hard it was. I don't even know how she got through singing it in the booth. I have no idea. Like it's gonna rival Ronin as like if I ever want to like die, I'm just gonna listen to Supermarket Flowers, this song, and Ronin, and like that's how I'm gonna go. Like, it's so I can't speak enough about Marjorie. It's such a great album. It's such a great song.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to close off with these next 2 points. So she basically, on the theme of endings, she talks about the album closer, Evermore, is basically someone finally emerging from the forest and going back inside to the warmth, saying that like this pain isn't forever. It's like, you're giving up the forest, you're finally going home to be enveloped in this warm feeling. And that's ending number 1. But then ending number 2, we have those 2 bonus tracks that we talked about earlier. And I think that it's alternate in the way that she's still kind of sitting with this pain, where Right Where You Left Me kind of leaves us. And then, what is it? It's Time to Let Go. Is that number 2?
Mm.
And that one,
It's time to go.
It's Time to Go. It's Time to Go just kind of leans into discomfort instead of the comfort. Because I think Evermore, she kind of, this pain won't be forevermore optimistic, and then It's Time to Go, she's just kind of like still in that pain, but like it's time to go, time to let go.
This album, I can't get over it, dude.
But
Like,
yes.
it's the album I never like. That's so funny because I think we described Folklore as that. I think we described Folklore by saying like it's the album we never knew we needed. And who would have thought Evermore is actually the album we never knew we needed? Like, because we knew we needed a new Taylor Swift album when Folklore came out. We're like, yeah, we want this. It's great. It's 2020. It's a year. Like, we really need something to bring us up. And we had that in Folklore, and we really didn't know we needed this album. And it has surpassed everything that I ever thought it would. Which I shouldn't be surprised. It's Taylor. Like,
Of course.
got that Midas touch, man. I swear.
She does.
But thank you guys for listening to another episode. This one was a little bit more freeform. We just wanted to talk more about Evermore and gush over it a little bit more. Next, to get into a little bit more into like back into our regular, like diving deep, doing some analytics and stuff like that about this album. But thank you guys for listening. If you like us, be sure to give us a subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Give us a review on Apple. Give us a 5-star rating. Tell a friend about us. It really helps us grow the podcast.
Yeah, and make sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to see our lovely, beautiful faces and fun backgrounds. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, like I said. So most of those are We Need to Calm Down podcast. On Twitter and Reddit, actually, we are WNTCD podcast. So make sure to interact with us on there and let us know what you think about everything.
We have a lot to unpack with Evermore and Folklore together now. So if you have a suggestion for an episode or something you'd like to get us touched on, like I said, we wouldn't have even known about this interview if it wasn't for a comment on one of our well, we probably would have figured it.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that. We probably would have figured it out. But we had someone mention that we need to watch this interview and talk about it. And that's kind of how this episode ended up coming to be. So if you have an idea for an episode or you think there's something we should talk about, please comment, DM. We will probably end up talking about it on the podcast.
Yeah. Aside from that, thank you so much. Have a happy holiday with whatever you're celebrating. And we will see you next Tuesday.
Come back.
We'll be here.